Recently had a mini reunion with several of my dear college friends. During our weekend gathering, we realized that we had first met one another 40 years ago. We were in disbelief that it could be that long or that we could be that old. And we observed some of the same things that we had previously marveled at over the course of those 4 decades. The most predictable and entertaining dynamic is how we all invariably fall into our old roles within the group. The teacher, the planner, the healer, the wise thinker, the quipper. Okay, that's not really a word, but the British think that a quipper is someone who makes quips. Because of our extensive experience with each other, we easily allow ample room for every role and personality. At this age, we feel little sense of comparison or competition among ourselves. Really, the only matter that we finally admitted to feeling any sense of self-consciousness about was whether or not we still ate at the dining room table. It turns out that most of us now eat dinner in the living room, watching the news. What a relief. The only one who still eats in the dining room said that the love seat in the living room is too small for her and her husband to comfortably sit side by side. We offered to chip in and get her a bigger couch. The trust and love that we feel for each other when we're together is vital and authentic. Thanks to Facebook, we keep up to date with family news and activities. So when we gather, we can get right to what really matters, all that cannot be seen, as Paul describes it in the passage that Nick read from the second letter to the Corinthians. Paul said, "We look not at what can be seen, but at what cannot be seen. For what can be seen is temporary, but what cannot be seen is eternal." This seems to me to be about the difference between superficial and deep-seated matters, one-dimensional and multi-dimensional topics, or cursory and penetrating conversation. Perspective is the true understanding of the relative importance of things. I seem to always be in search of perspective, and that's the ISO on the screen. I learned that from my 21-year-old. And I'm pretty sure that my using it makes me cool, at least for a moment. Perspective has a role in every aspect of our lives, in our relationships, at work, here in our church discussions. It helps us to distinguish between matters that will move the needle and those that won't. It allows us to put aside visceral feelings and employ more holistic awareness. Because of its inherent mercy and grace, perspective helps us to deepen our relationships with one another and with God. I'd like to focus for a minute on spring peepers. These are the so-called chorus frogs that live in wet woodland areas and mark the beginning of spring with their extraordinary communal display of mating behavior. In New England, the peeper chorus is heard just after the ice melts, usually sometime between March and June. Depending on the size of the group, the sound of the peepers' calls can be heard up to 2.5 miles away. After mating, the female will lay up to 1,000 eggs in a clutch, which she hides amidst the wet vegetation. After the eggs hatch, the new tadpoles take 2 to 3 months to become frogs, and then the new peeper frogs will live for 2 to 3 years, repeating the same mating ritual every spring. I'm so in awe of the work of these nocturnal amphibians. To me, the male's ardent overtures in trying to attract female mates and the female's care in protecting their cherished clutches is a spectacular demonstration of what is most important. They are focused on what really matters. Talk about perspective. Here's the sound of the chorus frogs across the street from our house in New Hampshire from this spring. Don't you love that? Oh, I love that. I'll speak for myself. You don't have to go to New Hampshire to hear them. You can go up South Border Road or just hang out on Hillcrest Parkway, especially across from Jody and Rob's house. There's an amazing group of peepers there. But you just can revel in the mightiness and the beauty of these little creatures. I like Paul's metaphor of our bodies as clay jars in his letter to the Corinthians. Clay is fragile and can crack and break, but Paul says our inner nature is being renewed day by day. That inner nature is our treasure, my treasure, and your treasure. It's what makes us uniquely ourselves. It's our essence, our gift, our offering to the world. Recognizing it in one another can sometimes prove elusive, but that's only because we are momentarily stuck in a superficial state and need to try to deepen our perspective. My college classmates and I are a tidy bunch. We're happy and healthy, educated and driven, well-traveled and worldly. But we're also worried about finances, relationships, medical issues, our careers, and our children. We openly share these concerns with one another and freely offer non-judgmental support and compassion. We speak deeply and then go off and don't see each other for months or years. Our common joys and plights keep us bonded, and our knowledge of what is most important for one another keeps our hearts intertwined. Paul says that as humans, we are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed. I think that's because of the resiliency of our inner natures. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and extend our love and compassion to others, we are strengthening what cannot be seen and what matters most. I'd like to share a poem written by a Methodist pastor and poet in Acton. His name is Steve Garnis Holmes, and he wrote this on June 21st, the longest day of the year. On my little island, this is the longest day. Perhaps on yours, it is the shortest. The same day means different things, depending on which island you're on. Recently, I lost something, and yet I gained. As I age, some things work more poorly, and some improve. Everything has light in it and dark. It's more full in our eyes when we see both light and shadow. There is always the thing and our judgment of the thing. There is my experience of it and yours. Neither is right nor wrong. Wisdom is knowing both. God, help us see without erasing. Help us discern without judging. Help us imagine the other side. Help us stand and allow. I love the beautiful portrayal of perspective in this poem, and I thank Will for turning me and others onto it. It demonstrates the critical importance of pulling the lens back in life. It makes room for everyone and everything, and asks God to help us share the gift of our multidimensional inner selves and to nurture the welcoming and compassionate space that we offer one another. May it be so. Amen.